PowerPoint, we just start with.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, we'll get started with the next session. I got it.
It's right here.
It's right here. It's right here. Okay, we can get started. Okay, assalamu alaikum. We need to get started with the next session. We're running behind schedule a little bit. If you can hear me, say shh. All right. I learned that recently. It's a nice trick. Alhamdulillah. Dr. Noha Alshugairi, she received her PhD in Islamic Studies from Graduate Theological Foundation, her master's in counseling from California State University, Fullerton, and her bachelor's in zoology from Rutgers University. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist in private practice in California. Noha, with Munira Azzuddin, is the co-author of Positive Parenting in the Muslim Home. She has been married for 38 years, mashallah, has 4 grown children and 5 grandchildren. Without further ado.
Do we need the mic?
Okay. Online, they will need the mic as well.
Now the problem is where to click it. Okay, thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. So I'm assuming everyone in the room has had some kind of background in either mental health, marriage and family therapy, counseling, social work. So for those of you who have finished your training or you are still in training, have you been taught how to actually teach parenting? Yeah? Okay, what's the course that you took?
I actually took something similar, positive discipline from the same organization, but not in discipline.
But it wasn't part of your program.
I took it as a training.
Yeah, but not part of your program. Yeah, okay, okay. Anyone took it as part of the program? Kind of, this is like the question that really, in a way, kind of confused me. Like I finished my master's degree in counseling, and then I'm supposed to go out and actually teach parents how to deal with their children. And we were not taught that. We were given all the beautiful theories, okay, about human condition and human nature and some of them conflicting, as you all know. Psychology doesn't agree on one view. And then you, as a new graduate, you leave and you go like, okay, I'm going to get this parent who's complaining about her teenager. How am I going to deal with it? How am I going to help this parent? So this workshop is to introduce you to a specific training that, what's your name? Sorry. Yasmin. That Yasmin took already, which is to train you in viewing how to help parents with their parenting problems with their children. So I'm introducing you to the training and I am hoping and I'm inviting you, if you are interested in helping parents, to actually take the training, because it's very powerful and very helpful. It's an interactive workshop. Basically, I would like to have 3 volunteers. Actually, we need 5. So, and you need to be comfortable being on Zoom, because they're actually recording us right now. So please, whoever is ready, 3 of you are going to be children and 2 of you are going to be parents. Just whoever wants to volunteer, please come up. Okay, we still need 2 more volunteers. Okay, here we have a father figure. Welcome, welcome. Thank you. Thank you. I have another father figure. Thank you. Okay, awesome. Okay, very good. So you guys are children, okay, in the same household, let's say. Okay, so you're gonna read from these. Okay, you're gonna alternate with your friend father right there. Okay, and let's see. I think you're the one who's gonna begin. Yes, yes, you're beginning. Okay, you're gonna say, no, wait. You're gonna say the first one, he's gonna say his first one, and then we come back to you. Okay. And what's your name? Nabiha. Nabiha. You're addressing your statements to Nabiha. And here you go. And again, Sarah. And you're addressing your statements to Sarah. And we're gonna alternate zigzag. Okay, so he's gonna begin. He's gonna do 1, then you're gonna do 1, then he's gonna do 2, and then you're gonna do 2.
Do I just read these out?
Yes, and if you can give it some.
Oh, I'll get into character, don't worry about it.
Yes, yes, yes. Do I need to hold the mic for them? Excuse me, my helpers and supporters. I think we do, right?
Maybe we can pass it around. Or is it going to be a microphone?
Yeah, they are going to be.
You as well?
No, not now. No, they're just gonna.
Let me prepare this way.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Oops. Sorry. Okay. So maybe it.
We'll keep passing it.
I can project my voice. I can project my voice as well.
I think for the, do we have people in Zoom?
Yes.
We do? Okay, we do have people. Okay. So maybe if you guys come closer, yeah, okay. Okay. Yeah.
Behind the chairs?
Okay. Yes, and maybe if we can turn you a little bit so you can see the parents. Yes, okay. Now, my request is the following. As you are listening to these statements, as you are saying the statements, okay, I just want you to catch whatever you're thinking, feeling, and deciding. Okay, anything you are thinking, feeling, and deciding is very valid.
Yeah.
And we want to hear about it after we're done with this role play.
Okay.
Good?
Sounds good.
Okay. Any questions before we start? Do you need us to do anything? No, you're just absorbing.
You have the negative ones, right?
Spoiler.
Okay. I think the negative ones is more fun though.
Right.
Okay.
You are the best player on the team.
You're a good team player.
You always have the right answers.
You figured it out for yourself.
You really know how to please me.
Yo. How do you feel about it?
You are such a good girl.
I appreciate your help.
I am so very proud of you.
I love you no matter what.
All I am going to give you is a reward.
You did your best and you didn't give up.
With more work, you'll get it right.
I have faith in you to learn from your mistakes.
I am glad that you listened to me.
Do you want us to do anything in between? I'll just keep going back and forth. Okay. You can decide what is best for you.
You did it just like I told you to.
You create your own uniqueness.
You always look perfect.
All right. Look how far you've come. You can do it.
You did it better than anyone else.
You worked so hard. You deserve it.
I like what you did.
I have faith in you and I trust your judgment.
Great. That's what I expected.
You must be proud of yourself.
I think that's all of them.
That's gonna have you be with us until we do processing and then, okay. So often I have no idea, so. Yes, okay. So Yasmin. What is it? Okay. Yasmin, what was going on with you?
I don't think neither of my parents liked me. Neither of them were addressing me, so.
So that's a decision. Okay, and why did this happen?
Body language, the direction of the voice, yeah. So they would look at one person, the other person would look at the other person. Even my sibling recognized it, which might cause some conflict between us.
Okay, continue, yeah. What kind of conflict are you gonna have with your sibling?
Maybe jealousy
Jealousy.
and feelings of like worthlessness on my end. Resentment, yep. And my sibling recognized it, so it makes me feel like she thinks she's better than me, maybe. And I also feel like I'm not just recognized, like maybe I don't have anything worth accomplishing or sharing. Yeah.
So this happens sometimes intentionally in homes and sometimes unintentionally. And the simple reason for it happening unintentionally is because parents do not know how to actually give some kind of encouragement to their children. And we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between the two statements or the two groups of statements in a little bit. Anything else you want to share?
No, I mean, I have my own observations of the different types of statements.
Okay, so let's keep it.
Yeah.
Okay, so, okay, let's hear from Nabiha. Okay, what was going on with you? Thinking, feeling, deciding.
I think it took me a second to kind of actually be listening to what was being said, but yeah.
In the beginning, what was happening?
I was kind of just, I would think I was like too out of it. I wasn't really in it. I was paying attention to what the point was. What are we trying to, I was kind of analyzing that. And I was wondering if we were going to get to some negative statements at any point.
Sure.
But then I think there were some statements that I actually did feel for myself. And I appreciated hearing, even if it wasn't necessarily this person saying it, I think even some other statements I heard, I was like, oh, that would have been nice to have heard too.
Oh, so it wasn't from your father, it was from the other father.
Like back and forth, back and forth.
Okay. Anything else you want to add?
Yep, that's all.
Okay, thank you. How about you, Sarah?
It was like some of it felt nice, but some of it felt a little bit overwhelming. Like it was almost like not genuine or like, I don't know, like an over, like just, yeah, just blown out of proportion. So it was like, yeah, some of it felt like it was making me feel good and positive, and some of it was like, oh, this is like now too much of an ego trip.
Okay, okay, were you able to track which ones were ego trip and which ones were positive? No?
Maybe the quantity, there were some that were like, I don't know, like acknowledging what I was doing, and then some were just like, you're amazing, like without any
Okay. So
like
that's-
work behind it, I guess,
So
or
that's
without.
one of the differences.
Yeah.
Is one is describing or labeling a person in general, and the other one is specifically kind of like describing or giving comment on a specific behavior or
Yeah.
a specific effort.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else you want to add?
No.
Okay, let's hear from our dads. Who wants to begin?
Yeah, I'll begin. This was an incredible exercise. It just kind of helped me to kind of recognize the power of positive reinforcement. I'm not a parent, but I am an uncle, and just even the crowd reactions. You see what I'm saying? Because I'm thinking that this is just a skit, but it's like it's resonating with the people here. And I think that kind of that made me recognize the importance of positive reinforcement, I guess. You know?
Yeah, being a father myself, no, I'm just kidding. I think I agree with you, like where it's just like almost like overwhelming, where like maybe some parents can overdo their praise, or they might believe that their kids are like you know, free from flaws or things like that, and they might not you know, apply discipline or maybe apply like some sort of, you know, like constructive things, I guess, where it should be applied. So I think it's overwhelmingly positive, but at the same time, I could see the value in what you were talking about, like just positive reinforcement in general. So, yeah.
Okay. Let's hear from you about what you were talking about earlier. You have comments on the differences or, you know, what you were hearing, reflecting.
Oh, I feel like they captured what I was thinking, but mostly what Sada was saying, like where maybe the message was coming from. And I think also you mentioned it. I didn't get your name. Okay, so Azadine was saying the quantity was like overwhelming. So I think just for the purpose of the skit, I got it, but like also it was just a little like a lot. I also don't think I'm like some of the phrases maybe weren't things that I could resonate with. So maybe that also felt overwhelming. Alhamdulillah. I don't know off the top of my head, but there was just like certain phrases from the both of their categories that I was like, I don't even know if I could see myself using that. So it would be hard for me to accept it. I think in my own experience, when my parents provide some sort of encouragement or praise, I find myself getting uncomfortable too, actually. So I think that's also like where it comes from.
Yeah.
Like phrases like "you're always hurt." I think that was kind of over the top. Like, you know, phrases like that. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, so the general.
Yeah.
General that are not tied to a specific effort. Nabiha wants.
A word that's coming to my mind, I think, with all this praise was the feeling of it being unearned. So a lot of this was like, oh, that should feel good, but it doesn't because I didn't do anything to earn that from you. So, you know, so that insincerity piece is there.
Anything else any one of you would like to add?
I think
Azadine?
yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're saying. So one of the ones that I liked was when I asked like, how do you feel about it? Which was I think is something valuable. A lot of parents don't take you know, what their kid actually thinks into account. So it's kind of like, you know, promote that, you know, critical thinking is very valuable. And yeah, that's what I think.
Okay, thank you. So basically, just to give some names to what we have been doing, what's your name? Imran.
Yes.
Okay, Imran. So Imran's statements or group of statements are praise, okay? And Azzuddin's statements are encouragement. So I would like you to start thinking with me and let's brainstorm together. Okay, what are the differences between praise and encouragement? We already said one, and maybe we can share then sentences as people respond and tell us. So one of them was specific, because I think you gave a specific encouragement to specific effort, or was none of them?
They're more like there's some that say like you're a good team player. Other ones say that
That
like-
he had, you're the best team player.
oh, okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I get
a good team player, okay, can be given at any given time. Because you can find something in how the child is actually playing the game that you can say you're a good team player because you actually know how to share the ball with your team members, okay? Versus
You're the best player on the team.
best player in the team can only be one person in the team. Okay, so that's a major difference between praise and encouragement. Any other dua?
So I noticed that non-statement.
Yeah.
Putting his daughter in a box. It was in a box and he was almost schooling her exactly what he wanted her to. And it was almost like he was feeding his own ego as a parent.
Yeah.
Like, you're perfect, you're amazing, you listen to everything I say, right? Like it was about him, it wasn't about her. But with me, it was more like open-ended questions. What do you think about it? How were you able to do this? So it puts the onus of responsibility on the child in terms of how they want to see the world and how they can do it.
100%. And so one of the differences also is with Azzuddin's statements, we are trying to instill an inner locus of control, versus with praise, we are instilling, unfortunately, an external locus of control. Because it's all about who is watching me, who is seeing me, and for some kids who are pleasers, they want their parents to be really happy with them. So you have those kids who end up being like, I'm just gonna do it because I want to please my parents, but not thinking. They're not so imagine when they leave, the home and they go to college and they're surrounded by all these different inputs. And who are they gonna please at that time? We are hoping that we can instill in our children an inner locus of control, because then we can talk about how Allah is watching you at any given moment. It's not about me. I do not need to be next to you. So you can actually do what is right. Yeah. Okay, what other differences? Yes.
With a lot of what about saying, I see that a lot of I have to be perfect all the time, which happens in
Yes. Yes.
anxiety, depression over time.
Yes.
And the other thing, guilt. You go through your entire life always feeling guilty that I'm not measuring up.
100%.
Mental health challenges, which causes interrelational challenges and that.
100%.
Again, it was all about the dance.
And I want to also add to what you're saying. In the 1980s, in the US specifically, there was an emphasis on the self-esteem movement. And how was the self-esteem movement propagated, or how were we invited to actually instill self-esteem in children? We were told that we need to tell them, oh, you're so special, you're wonderful, you're amazing, nobody's like you. Oh my God, don't care if your teacher doesn't see you, I see you. And that ends up, they go to college, they discover, oh, I'm really not special. Honestly, there are there are thousands of people out there like me or better than me. And we end up with their sense of self deflates. It's a reality check. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. You had, yes.
I'll just talk about my upbringing really quickly. My Islamic mentors and teachers often say that.
Thank you for saying that.
Given an opportunity, no one else has gotten.
Yeah.
You must go on and spread this message around the world.
Yeah.
The weight of the world now is on my shoulders.
Yes,
So
yes.
Allah gave you something to give most of the United States. So it's like, oh my Lord.
And I'm going to add one more to what you just said, especially in the Muslim community. And I hope you will all leave with this, is the idea of we tell our children, we want you to be good Muslims. And when we tell our children, we want you to be good Muslims, and they make one small sin, what's going on in their minds is, I'm not good. I'm not a good Muslim. And keep in mind, the Quran does not talk about good Muslims. You will not find in the whole Quran good Muslims. Amelia. Amelia. You will find in the Quran Muslims, mu'mins, muhsins, and then descriptions, specific descriptions of behavior. The ones who pray, the one who fast, the one who are honest, the one who pays zakah. So, let's go back to our roots. Okay, let's eliminate good Muslim from the dictionary in our community, because it's really causing a lot of havoc with our children. Okay, you had your hand up, sir. Yeah. Please share it. Yes, yeah. Right.
So there's never room for anything else.
And you are going to be imperfect.
Right.
And then that would be the seed of sometimes depression and, despair for some of the young people when they go, I'm not perfect, but I'm supposed to be perfect, I mean, yeah. Thank you. Dua, you had a comment?
It's almost like a high.
Uh-huh.
And like they rely so much on the praise of other people.
Not everybody, though.
Yeah.
I want you to think of those who do not get the praise. And there are more students or more children who do not get praise than the other way around. So just think about those who do not get the praise, what happens to them and what kind of worldview they're holding. Yeah. So continue.
Yeah. And then the other thing I was thinking about is like for kids who are visibly.
Yeah.
It's almost like you have to be representative of Islam and Muslims all the time. Like we can't ever get angry. We can't ever like have emotions because look, other people are gonna look at us and we can't be normal people because we have to be, representatives of the.
So Dua, a very good point. Who is sending this message to them? Four things.
The media, their parents.
It's not the media, okay? Definitely not the media, unless we're talking social media from the Muslim community, yes. But the parents are, and the teachers are, and then some peers, it's like, oh no, you can't, you have to represent Islam. That's such a heavy burden, honestly, on any one of us, even us adults. Do you want this burden of representing Islam? No, we don't want that. And yes, some people will misunderstand Islam. It's on them. Okay, we're just gonna do our part, but we are not responsible to be the perfect representation of Islam because we are not going to be perfect. And that wasn't even required at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. He did not require of any of his companions to be perfect, and they were not perfect. They kept working at their shortcomings. They kept working at improving, but nobody expected to be perfect. So something is wrong with how we are dealing with our Islam right now in this country, in this era, where like there is a lot of emphasis on Islam perfection, and it's causing a lot of harm. And we need to really change that, because Islam really is easier and it's closer to the heart when it is not tied as such. Yeah. Okay, I don't want to hold you here. Yeah, yeah, but I want to release you back. So can we give them a hand, please? Thank you. Yes, you had a question, sorry. Sorry?
Self-esteem.
Yeah, the self-esteem.
And like the 80s, like the movement to like, just everything's about self-esteem, like that was the most important thing. But it felt like the other brother was fostering more self-compassion.
Here, Azzeddin was doing compassion.
So he was fostering self-compassion.
Self-compassion and self-acceptance, okay, and recognizing that, maybe I don't throw a very good basketball ball. I'm not good in basketball, but you know what? I'm okay in math. Okay, for any one of us, in order to come to this sense of musalaha with the nafs, which is like acceptance of oneself, you need to be accepting of your shortcomings, and everybody has shortcomings. And it doesn't mean I'm just gonna go around and say, oh yeah, this is my shortcoming, khalas, you have to deal with it. No, I will acknowledge my shortcomings. I will know how I need to deal with them, not to harm the people around me and not to harm myself, but I need to accept that I am not perfect. So yes, know what I'm good at, and know what is it that I'm not good at, and then delegate to someone who is better than me in that particular area. So yeah, self-compassion, self-acceptance, okay, humility. Also at this, it's kind of like knowing yourself with humility, okay? And that's the difference between people who are arrogant, okay? So anything else you wanted to add? Okay, thank you, Sarah.
I was wondering, because since the encouragement is usually related to something that's being done, how do you find that balance between, because what I'm thinking about is like, what if the kid starts feeling like the parents' love is conditional, like only when I achieve, only when I do things am I recognized?
Okay, so thank you. Okay, so let's go ahead and write the differences between the two. Okay, so we have praise, okay, and we have encouragement. Okay, you have the Sarah, you have the paper in front of you with a table of the differences between praise and encouragement. Okay, so can you share with me one of look at the sentences that are examples of encouragement?
Okay, so one example is, you did such a great job with cleaning the car.
Okay, so you did such a great job with cleaning the car. Okay, this is very specific. It happened this week. We have some, we don't have enough for everybody, but we have some, you can catch some as you're walking out. So you can wash the car today, okay? Next week, maybe you're not gonna wash the car. You're still okay. You follow me? You see how the statement is not saying you are always washing the car every week. Okay, give me another example. Okay, so this is, I'm not saying, I'm just giving him, thank you, yes. I'm just giving him encouragement that he's putting time to memorize Quran every day. So I'm not saying you're not making mistakes. Like I work with some of the parents who work with Quran memorization with their children, and they're so focused on the mistakes. They're like, look how many mistakes you've done. Okay, because they will make mistakes. So instead of that, okay, you are working every day to actually, you're putting time into memorizing Quran. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Because basically what we're saying in encouragement, we are going to catch anything, okay, that the child is doing and actually reflect it back to them. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be the end result. It can be just an effort. Okay, so we're mirroring back to them what we are seeing them do that is good, and it has to be genuine. So I'm not gonna say, you're such a good helper when this child of mine actually doesn't help. And that's, I think Nabiha was saying it wasn't genuine or I didn't earn it, because kids know. You know, they know when we actually give them like these fluff statements. Oh, you're very good. Oh, you're so special. Oh, no. Okay. Any other differences that you have noticed between encouragement and praise? Here, it's very specific. So it's not general. I'm not saying you are special. Okay. Any other, yes.
You just said the difference between effort and outcome.
Uh-huh. Yes.
Effort.
Yes. Okay, effort. And then here we are so focused on the outcome. And that's why praise is only given in specific situations. Like after I finish a test, after I get an A, after, okay. But here encouragement can be done during the process, before the process, at any given moment, at the end of the process. Okay. Any other differences that you see? Yes.
Because we talked about earlier, encouragement is for intrinsic.
And for the locus of control, internal. Yes. Okay. And one, yes.
It's just encouragement and accomplishment, like you are.
So the sense of accomplishment. Yes. That I am capable. I actually, even if it's something small, I remember one parent, she had a teenager and she had a child in elementary school. The teenager, yarhamkumullah, was an A student. Okay. Mother didn't have to worry about homework, nothing. The teenager was doing it all on her own. But the younger child, the one in elementary school, was not into school at all. And the mom was, you know, she's really upset. And how am I going to help her? How am I going to get her to be like her sister? And so we had to sit down and then talk about, okay, you know, this daughter of yours is not like your older daughter, but what are her strengths? And she had to sit and think about what are the strengths of my daughter, because she didn't know, because she was only seeing it through, oh, she is not an A student. Okay. And then she sat and she sat and she sat. She couldn't come up with things. And then as we're going through the session, she mentioned the story. And then I said to her, you just told me that your youngest daughter, when you get to home, she runs to the car and she helps you carry the stuff from the car to the kitchen. Okay, your youngest daughter is a helper. Your youngest daughter is someone who is, you know, who cares about, you know, about the people around her. Okay, she needs to hear this from you because she doesn't know this about herself. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so yes, go ahead.
I think praise, you're looking at the end goal.
Yes.
You said the result. Encouragement more the process. I was thinking about a family, friend.
Yes.
And also like when you're praising all the like and the child is recognized by a teacher, the school administration, whatever. And it's like the child is only recognized when other people are recognized.
Yes. Yes.
Like someone that I know, there's a Quran competition. Kids have to memorize pretty long.
Surahs.
I think the fact that any of you, you know, memorize it at all. Now there's a competition going on, it's fine. But I know the child did not get a trophy, didn't get first place. And he was driving home, he's like, oh my God, my parents are gonna be so upset that I didn't get first place. I'm like, but you memorized this long story, that would take me like 3 years to do. But that just kind of broke my heart.
And don't get me started on trophies. Okay, everybody gets trophies, everybody gets certificate of participation. I'm like, what are we doing to our children? Okay, we have only a couple of more minutes. My message to all of you, I hope, I'm inviting you to actually do the training in positive discipline. Okay, because you're all working in the mental health field. It really is going to help you in working with the parents who are struggling with their children. The advantages of this particular training is several. One of them, for me personally, because that's where I start, it aligns very well with Islam. Like that, my base is Islam. If something doesn't work with Islam, fits Islam, then it's not gonna come into my circle. So that's number one. Number two, it's very interactive. The whole workshop, when you do workshops with parents, is basically activities, just like you saw right now. And you do processing with the parents. So they come up with the answers. And I will tell you, you are, mashallah, professionals. Even the answers that you get from the parents are very profound and very powerful. They get it. This is basically psychodrama, what we're doing here, okay? And it gets in touch with their unconscious. So through the role play, you're doing an integration of the right and left brain between the conscious and the unconscious. So that's one of the beautiful aspects of this training. It's all interactive activities. It's not boring. You're not going to give lectures. And it's really, I think it's more effective and more moving than just telling the parents what they need to do. Okay. Any quick questions before we end for today? Amelia, she's taking the workshop right now. Yeah.
By the way, how many people in like my coaching too? Thank you, Lab, for her. But
thank you.
I just enrolled in the workshop, and I just feel like one of the benefits that I keep hearing from the facilitators is that it shifts the whole culture of the family too. So it's not just a parent-child dynamic, but even, you know, spouse to spouse, that dynamic can really improve. So it's like a therapeutic, you know, across the ecological levels. And I really believe something like this, for my field in suicide prevention research, it's like puzzle pieces going together.
Thank you so much for saying this. For two things, I'm just gonna say this and be quiet. I do believe that because I took this workshop, it actually saved my marriage. Because there is one specific activity in this workshop that actually talks about the different personality dynamics. And once I understood my husband's personality, I was able to have the compassion that you were talking about earlier, because before I was very judgmental. I was like, he needs to do this. He should be doing this. Why isn't he like this? Okay. Until I understood where I'm coming from, how am I causing him stress? Because I was causing him a lot of stress. I'm a very intense person at home. Okay. My husband says if mom goes into the kitchen, everyone has to evacuate the kitchen because the hurricane has come in. So so that's number one. It really saved my marriage. And the second thing is the prevention, the suicide prevention. I believe that it all starts in the family. And so that's why I'm so passionate about parenting classes, because we're talking about solving problems in our offices, in our clinics, right? So I believe that in our community, we are not doing enough parenting classes. We're not, okay? And we need to do more of those, because as Amelia just said beautifully, if you shift the culture of the family, then you have hopefully, inshallah, prevented a future problem. So, Jazakumullah khair. Thank you very much for participating and attending. And now we have, yes.
Sorry, I have a comment.
Okay.
I want to say it earlier. I think, unfortunately, I didn't grow up.
Alhamdulillah. Welcome to the fold. to the very difficult fold. Yeah, alhamdulillah.
I think parents, looking at my parents, I think you see your children as extensions of yourself. You know, so if I want, you know, if I'm like this and I want my child to be more like the way that I am, you know, and I think with my mother and my father, you know, they sometimes when they would say certain things to me or give me praise or even discipline, it was based off of sometimes how they saw themselves.
And they wanted you to be like them.
Exactly.
Which is, so I'm going to do this to get you to be like me. which happens a lot in the Muslim community too. Yes, and in the Muslim community, we add the piece of the extension, the piece of faith. My son, my daughter is like, you know, is not really interested in Islam right now a lot. Okay, they're kind of like not praying, they're not fasting, and what is the community gonna say about me, especially if I'm a very influential, important figure in the community. We have this big time in our community as well. So shifting the culture is very important, to use Amelia's word. And now the complementary piece to this, I forgot your name. Tahani. Yeah, Tahani is going to talk about parents are not coming. They're not attending parenting workshops. Okay. Are we going to leave the youth at a loss? No, we're not going to do that. This is what she's going to talk about. Okay, here we go.
Thank you so much. Yeah, go for it. I also don't know how this works.
Okay, there's pieces here, but I'll work it so that it's
okay.
easier to. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Noha Alshugairi. Thank you so much. That was really powerful. And next we have Tahani Chaudhry and Denise Berte as well. Yes, they'll be presenting on peaceful futures, as they already mentioned. So just a quick bio on Tahani. All right. All right. Tahani Chaudhry is the Research and Resource Development Coordinator at Peaceful Families Project. Her work at PFP, Peaceful Families Projects, includes collaborating on curriculum development and community trainings, co-leading the American Muslim IPV study. What's IPV? Oh, Intimate Partner Violence study, and leading initiatives like the PFP Male Allies Group. Tahani is a doctoral candidate in clinical psychology at George Mason University. Her research focuses on the role of religious leaders in the resilience and well-being of survivors of intimate partner violence. Without further ado, Tahani.
So is that something I can clip?
No, we can try to do that. Oh, you'll put it in the top. Okay.
And then let me flip that. I'll flip it. Yeah. Oh.
Sure, if I click
There you go.
here.
No, you did. Okay. Is that good enough? All right. All right. Do you want us to bring down the slide thing? All right. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Can everyone hear me all right? Okay. I feel like I have an echo in my own ears, so like I can't tell how much I'm projecting and how much I'm not. People in the back, can you hear me? Okay, awesome. Well, as Brother Mustafa mentioned, I am the Research and Resource Development Coordinator at Peaceful Families Project. Dr. Denise Berte, who is our Executive Director, just handed out a flyer so that you all are aware of what we do. In general, we are a nonprofit organization that is nationally based, and we develop a lot of curriculums, and we work at national levels with task forces to end domestic violence and prevent domestic violence in the American Muslim community, particularly through an Islamic perspective, an Islamic framework. So a lot of the work that we do is a combination of Islamic scholarship and mental health professionals coming together to work towards this problem that we have in our community. So what I'm going to be presenting today is one of our specific curriculums, which is Peaceful Futures. And this is where we're really talking about the youth in our community. We have other areas and curriculums that we focus on that I will quickly summarize. We do something called Peaceful Families, which is focusing particularly on domestic violence and intimate partner violence in the Muslim community. And we do trainings of community leaders and religious leaders, particularly imams and chaplains, throughout the country to help make them feel more prepared to address this very prevalent problem in our community. We do something called the Male Allies Group, because we know, looking at all the men in the room,
that we need more male voices in this conversation. This is not a sisters problem. This is a community level problem. So if you're interested in the Male Ally Group, please join us. We would love to have more voices working together with us. We also have developed a Muslim faith-based perpetrators intervention program, which Dr. Denise mentioned earlier today. But that's really where our main goal is, bringing faith and Islam into the prevention of domestic violence. Okay. Do any of these work? Oh, should I use the mouse? Okay. Okay, great. So my agenda for today is really just to get an understanding of the importance of youth development in healthy relationships, so that they are learning the skills that we need to prevent domestic violence from even happening in our communities. I want to introduce PFP's Peaceful Futures curriculum so that you all have a sense of what we have to offer, what we're putting out there. This curriculum is the first of its kind. I'm going to talk a little bit about our pilot program for this curriculum that we ran last year, with a little bit of research and data associated with it. I am a PhD student, so research is it's a big part of my life. I can't let it go. And then inshallah, we'll get to reviewing one module activity as a sneak peek into this curriculum, because this is an interactive curriculum that we really want to take to the youth in our communities.
And the only thing I'll jump in and let you know that this is absolutely an infomercial. We are recruiting. We want you all to come to our training, to really take this curriculum and spread it throughout your community, right? So we'll get that out up in the front, so it's not subtle or under the table.
I really do want to start with this idea of what is domestic violence, because oftentimes we have misinterpretations or misunderstandings about domestic violence. It is not just showing up with black and blue eyes. It is not just physical hitting. Domestic violence, as we define it, is a pattern of behaviors in which one person in an intimate relationship, in a familial relationship, is using their power and control over another person in that relationship. And that can show up in a lot of different ways. Yes, physical, but it also shows up emotional abuse, psychological, financial, and sexual violence. And this could be by a current partner, a previous partner, which would be intimate partner violence. But we also look broadly at domestic violence as this could be your children. This could be your in-laws. This could be your grandparents. This could be, and a lot of our Muslim communities, it's not just that nuclear, dynamic, nuclear family. We have a lot of extended family who have a role in the lives that we're living and the youth that we're raising. So that violence is anyone that is in that domestic familial relationship. So it occurs in a lot of different ways. Just to get you all a little bit of a teaser for why is this important, Peaceful Families Project and Project Sakina in 2011 did a national survey of domestic violence in the American Muslim community. And we found that 31% of American Muslims report experiencing abuse within an intimate partner relationship. And this is pretty consistent with the national American average. So when you look around, 1/3 of the people in this room have experienced some kind of abuse in an intimate relationship. When you expand that to domestic violence largely, so anyone in the home, it goes to 53%. People have experienced some form of domestic violence by someone in their family during their lifetime. That could be physical, emotional, financial. There's a lot of different ways it shows up, but they've experienced some kind. If you look at the room around you, I can't count how many people are in here because I'm really bad at estimating things, but this half of the room has experienced it, this half of the room hasn't. That's a lot of people, right? So this is a real problem in our Muslim community, and oftentimes we like to brush it under the rug or say, no, alhamdulillah, we're a peaceful community. Islam is all about peace, right? We're called Peaceful Families Project, so yes, peace is great, but we also have to understand the stark realities of where our community is at right now, because we can't just ignore the problem away. I want to distinguish between men and women because there are differences in experiences. A lot of times we have this idea of domestic violence is something that women experience. Yes, 56% of women experience domestic violence of some form in their lifetimes. 44% of men do as well. Now, the difference between is that oftentimes women are experiencing violence in intimate relationships, spousal relationships, and oftentimes the men are experiencing it in familial relationships. So it's often more child abuse or abuse coming from other members of the family. But what goes to say is, when we're talking about men need to be a part of this conversation, it's not just because often they're perpetrating abuse. No, that's not the point. It's because they're often experiencing it. And we've created such a stigma around men being able to come forward, boys being able to come forward and share. Because if they do, they're somehow not strong. They're somehow weak. They're not manly enough, right? And that is why we need to have more men's voices in this conversation. And then we go to 66% of American Muslims know someone who was the victim of physical abuse. That is severe. Majority of our communities know someone in their realm who has experienced this. Now, I know I'm spending a lot of time on this. I like stats, I like research, but the point is to show you all how stark this problem is in our community. So what do we do about it? Because we're not just gonna say, oh, okay, it's awful, we're gonna sit back, there's nothing we can do. There are a lot of avenues for what we can do. One of those avenues is focusing particularly on children. Now, children are exposed to domestic violence every year. There's a stat of about 15.5 million children every year exposed to domestic violence. That can look different. It could be watching or hearing violence in their home. It could be becoming involved because they're trying to intervene, they're trying to stop the violence. A lot of times children feel like they have the responsibility to end it. A lot of children see the aftermath of the violence. And those are just the ways that they're witnessing violence. There are children who we find that 30 to 60% of intimate partner violence perpetrators are also perpetrating abuse against the children in the home. So children are also directly being abused. So this is a problem that doesn't just start when you're like 25 looking to get married and that's when domestic violence starts. No, this is something that starts as early as the child in the womb. Because when the victim of violence is pregnant, that child is feeling the impacts of it. So what we do is we focus on the children, because peaceful children make peaceful adults, right? It makes peaceful families, which make peaceful communities, which inshallah make a peaceful ummah. And a stronger Islam is what makes a better world for all of us. If you haven't experienced it directly, you have experienced it indirectly, because our community is experiencing the wounds of this trauma. So let's talk about previous literature. Again, the researcher in me is coming out. We find that there is youth training in healthy relationships that are a pretty effective tool for preventing domestic violence, right? When you start early, we can catch this problem in time to prevent that future from becoming abusive. It can be as effective as early as middle school. And that's like the earliest training that I've found, middle school. But there's a lot of research on how we can start having these conversations as young as children who are like toddlers, right? When we're working with children who are 2, 3, 4, 5, we're telling them what healthy boundaries are. We're telling them what consent is. That is all training them to go on into becoming adults who establish healthy relationships. But we are also finding in the literature that not all of these programs are effective, right? They're not effective in changing beliefs or attitudes. Some of them might have effectiveness in like changing behaviors for the time that people are in the program, but then when you look at them 6 months later, it's back to square one, right? So we also need to figure out, okay, well, what do we need to add to this conversation? What needs to change? Culturally relevant adaptations. Violence that is happening in a home is not happening in a vacuum. It's happening in a cultural context. It's happening in a social context. It's happening in a faith-based context. So it's so important that we are adapting interventions to really take account for the complexities of human beings. And yet, there is a very limited amount of interventions that are faith-based, right? For youth. And the ones that do exist are primarily Christian. So yeah, we can draw from them, but looking around the room, we need something that really speaks to us. We need something that uses Islam, which is all of our model for how to live life, right? And we need to go back to our basic principles, and yet that doesn't exist. So what Peaceful Families went ahead and did is made it into being. So what we do is we developed a youth curriculum for healthy relationships called Peaceful Futures, which, as I mentioned earlier, really brings together those Islamic principles and the psychological perspectives. This is a training that was developed by educators, mental health professionals, and very closely reviewed by Islamic scholars, because we're trying to make sure that there's that fidelity to the religion in there, right? We want to make sure that we are not saying anything that's outside of the fold of what Islam teaches us. We don't have to move away from Islam to have healthy relationships. The solution is going back to Islam. So what this curriculum is aimed for is that we have 3 different versions of it. One is for middle school, which is the 11 to 14-year-olds. We want to try to catch them really young. There's one for high school, which is the 15 to 18-ish years old. And then one that are young adults, more college age, the 19 to 21-year-olds. And the reasoning behind why it's so important for having different versions is because we want to make sure that everything is developmentally appropriate. The things that I'm going to say to a 20-year-old college student who might be thinking about marriage and who might be thinking about initiating some of those relationships and really need to learn some of those things, very different than the 11-year-old who's just starting to go through puberty and being like, what are girls? What are boys? Oh my goodness, don't look at me, right? It's a different context. And it's so important that when we're talking to them in the way that really addresses what they're going through in that stage of their life, right? So all of these modules really focus on being developmentally appropriate so that we're allowing the youth to increase their awareness, but their own self-reflection, really understanding themselves so that they can then build these skills and develop critical thinking. Because going back to Sister Noha's presentation, we're not providing them the praise of like, this is what you have to look like to be a good Muslim, right? We're providing them that internal locus of control so that they can start developing some of that critical thinking to be like, what is right? What is wrong? How do I choose these things? Where's the gray area? And how can I talk around that gray area? So let's talk about some of the topics that are included in this presentation.
One of the reasons that we were sort of commanded by the community to take this curriculum was these are also conversations that Muslim parents sometimes have, and you all know this, right? Have a really hard time initiating with their children. What is change? What is like, we're not dating, but there's this thing, and you look at other people, and what is puberty, and how are you changing, and what is marriage look like, and how do we make marital decisions, and all of those kinds of things. So what we found was that this was something that was really requested from actually starting from university age folks who were coming to us and saying, please do this because we are not getting this necessarily in our homes. Our parents are uncomfortable. Our parents are not giving us the chance to have open conversations. So even if we have conversations, they're kind of like, this is what you should do. And this is mostly, this is what you shouldn't do. So the curriculum really is to fill in that gap. We know that Muslim kids, a lot of Muslim kids are going to secular schools, so they're getting a ton of information that is not Islamically based. We wanted to give them this opportunity to get information, critical information about their own development, but in a way that was Islamically based. So they didn't feel like it was haram. They could actually think and talk about it in a way that is promoted by Islamic values and understanding.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of times the Muslim community does it to itself, right? By stigmatizing so many of these topics and by pushing them aside for years and years and years. And then you hit 22 and your parents are like, so when are you getting married? Do you have anyone you've been talking to? Let's get it done right now. Halas, you know? That doesn't work when you have socially awkward teens who are not allowed to even think about this concept of what are relationships? How do I talk to the opposite gender? What are the rights and responsibilities of husbands and wives, right? You need to be able to plant these seeds at a younger age so that they're evolving. And yet we don't do that. And a lot of times where they are learning that information, where they are learning those skills is through a secular context, which may not be in line with what our Islamic values are, right? We know what our Islamic differences are, what they're not. And we want to own them. And we want to say, okay, how can we utilize these to develop healthy relationships and healthy communities and healthy families? So let's talk about the different topics that we cover in this curriculum. Because what we want to do is we want to build a foundation, but we also want to touch on some of those hot topics that a lot of children and youth are struggling with right now. They're getting a lot of information from the media, from their schools. They're getting all of this information. They don't know how to filter through it because as a community, we're not giving them the framework to be able to filter through it critically. So we talk about Islamic relationships. What might occur to people, like when you're thinking of an Islamic relationship, what are you thinking of? Or raise your hand, speak up. Marriage, yeah. And who do we look to when we're thinking about marriage? Yeah, we think about the Sira, we think about the Prophet ﷺ and the ways that he acted in his own marriages. What are some other Islamic relationships that we consider? Parents, that's a big one, especially for middle schoolers, high schoolers. Oh my goodness, a lot of that parental tension that's coming, they're developing their own independence and they're like, these people need to get off my back. And yet their parents are like, well, you have to listen to me because Islam says so. If you don't listen to me, you're a bad Muslim, right? And so we need to talk about those dynamics of what do relationships look like in Islam. Islam tells us the rights of the parents and Islam tells us the responsibilities of the parents. Islam tells us the rights of the children. And yet often that's kind of excluded from the conversation. So what we do in this curriculum is let's take that more holistic approach. We talk about gender roles, right? One of the things that we talk a lot about in this curriculum that I love and is one of the activities is what was your gender light bulb moment? When did that light bulb go off on the top of your head of like, oh, I'm a Muslim man or oh, I'm a Muslim woman. And that looks different than the other gender. So I just want you to pause for a second and think about what was your gender light bulb moment? When did it really click? And then if anyone's willing to share, be that brave person who raises their hand, goes on. Yeah. Community college? Yeah, tell me about that.
I don't know, I think it was also when I started therapy actually, so.
So you were doing a lot of unpacking.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think it's my own awareness. And understanding the discourses of my own community, my culture, my family.
Mhm.
So I can tell you exactly that that was a time when I felt my health was declining because I think it was like, I opened a can of worms.
Yeah. It's like you go to therapy and you open that Pandora's box and you're like, oh my goodness, all these things have been affecting me my whole life. And I've been pushing to the side and now I've opened them and now what do I do with this, right? We want to make sure kids aren't getting to that point where they're not even being allowed to process and unpack of their experiences as they're going along, right? We want to give them a safe space to be able to talk about these things earlier on in their lives. There's someone in the back as well, yeah.
I feel like for me, it was like at a very young age, like it was almost like right off the bat. I think subconsciously Muslim parents, like especially growing up in the Baby household, like it was very different between like my brother and me. And I think probably it was like after like my parents divorced, like my brother, like everyone was like, okay, like you have to be the man.
Oh yeah.
Like, you should be taking responsibility and like taking care of your sister and your mom, and like that put a lot of pressure on him. But then like for me, it was like, oh, like you should be like the caretaker and like the person who's like being that emotional support and like making sure that things are like happening in the household because like we don't have as many people like who are like a support system in that family anymore. And like even though like my parents, like my family, it's like pretty matriarchal, like Daisy, and like we do have like that whole like, oh, academic success and like propelling in your career, like subconsciously there's always like this kind of like conditioning of like a girl in like this household where it's like, oh well, like why aren't you like pretty like right at this or like hitting puberty, like it was like you should start cooking because like what are you gonna do when you have a family? So, like you need to like start learning these skills because like this is gonna be important as like you get older, and it's like also put into the framework of like as a Muslim like woman, like you're responsible to be like a wife, a mother, like a sister, like you're responsible to all these people around you, and like as a Muslim man, like you're responsible to your people around you because you know you're gonna be like the main financial breadwinner, and that's gonna be your main role. Like you need to like develop these skills like early on, but it creates like a gap where men aren't learning the like emotional things that they're also responsible for. Like if you're supposedly the head of the household, like you also are responsible for like cultivating a like environment of happiness for your family, like as a man, you know, like, and what does that look like beyond just like buying your wife some nice
presents and like giving your kids gifts when you're like back from work, like,
Yeah.
no, like, that's not true happiness. Like, you're also responsible as a man to like give emotional support and like create an environment where people are happy and like liking their household. It's like a woman is like responsible.
Mhm.
Yeah, sorry.
And what I would say, that's beautiful, and that's a lot of words, but a lot of our folks don't get that. A lot of it's just, my aunties don't hug me anymore because I'm 12 and I'm now a man, or they put their hijabs on, or I'm not allowed to sit next to so-and-so. Or when we go to, Sunday school, our classes are now separated, or there's a lot of like innuendo, well, you know what you should be doing, or you know what you shouldn't be doing. So a lot of it, like, I love you guys because you actually had conversations, like there's actual verbiage, but for a lot of our communities, we are not there. It's just, it's visceral, it's, what are you doing? But there's not a lot of explanation.
Yeah, and what I love about that is that a lot of these gender roles are very implicit, right? They're very like, kind of going under the radar, you're expected to know something. So that's why this light bulb moment is so strong, is because it finally comes to the forefront. And I love calling men out because I love hearing the voices of men. So if any of the men in this room are comfortable, yeah.
Very quiet.
Yes.
I'm driving my dad to surgery. It was pretty like bread and butter, spinal treatment, but the goal is there's some down. And with any surgery,
Yeah.
and told me that like if anything happened to him, that he trusted me. So
How would that feel?
I put into words, but it was
It's like basically the whole world is being placed on your shoulders. And a lot of the young men, the boys in our communities, are growing up with this pressure of, oh my goodness, I have to carry this responsibility of carrying this family forward. And am I ready to do that? Are we preparing our boys to be able to do that? Are we giving them the emotional intelligence along with the financial savvy to be able to do that? Yeah.
I think a lot of that pressure comes from, too, like you just mentioned, we are giving them expectations without mentorship. We think when a man reaches a certain age, it's just automatically supposed to click. When we don't understand, we have to keep in mind that it's a process that you have to go about step by step. And there's emotions behind that you have to go by step by step.
Yeah.
If those emotions aren't necessarily being catered to, that man is not necessarily going to know how to handle it. Unfortunately, those emotions are exerted on his family. And that's where dysfunction comes.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to talk about male mentorship. We have a lot of Muslim young men who are like, Andrew Tate, yeah, like, let's hear about what gender roles are. Get the Porsche, get the finances, because that's how we're going to get the girls. I can tell you from a women's perspective, no, that's not going to work. And we need men to come back to this Islamic perspective of what masculinity is. Islam has so much on femininity and masculinity for us to learn from. We go back to our Islamic scholars like Dawood Walid, who created a whole book on Islamic masculinity, Futuwa. And those are what we're coming back to. All of y'all who talked about male mentorship, come to me, join our male allies group. So that's another kind of sneak peek. Yeah.
here. I mean, just to piggyback on what you're saying, especially talk about separating cultures from what's now Islam. Especially for African American or Latino, we hold our masculine very close to us. So as we navigate the world, we have to be cognizant in terms of how we exert. We come from the communities that we come from. How is way I grew up? Maybe in this space, as a Muslim, maybe I should look at how Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam handled this. And how do I redefine what my masculinity is? As I get married, how I deal with my children, how I deal with my parents, how I deal with, the young people in my community.
And I think that importance of bringing culture to the forefront is so relevant because a lot of our communities, that is a significant factor. Islam doesn't say throw your culture away, right? Islam says take the parts of your culture that are good, that are positive, that are in line with Islamic values, and let away the ones that are not.
Okay, this is a question.
Yeah.
So have you guys already done this curriculum with a group of people?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
You are keeping me on track. I love it.
Okay. Right now, okay, this is gender identity very awesome. And
Yeah.
Yes,
And we.
love that. Yes, so let me keep going through the topics. It's all over. Uh-huh. No, I love that. That's so important because it goes back to this idea of we have topics that American Muslims who are young are dealing with, and they're being put, like this is being taught to them in their schools, and they're getting a framework for it that's secular. And the Muslim community is like, astaghfirullah, we're not going to talk about that, right? But no, but what are your youth learning? Where are they getting that information from, right? Because if you don't talk about it, that doesn't mean it goes away. That means they're building a different framework. So let me just quickly go through the topics. Thank you for keeping me on track. So then we talk about relationship skills. How do we build healthy relationship skills, right? These are things like consent, personal boundaries, understanding your communication styles, understanding that you might have different styles with different people, right? We want to have a very interactive, like self-reflective program to get kids to start thinking about these things. They're not just going to magically hit 15 and be like, yes, I know how to communicate with people. They're going to hit 23 and be like, yes, I can get married and I'm going to have perfect communication with my spouse. That's not how it works. You start young. You start communication with your parents. You start communication with your siblings, and then you expand that out. We go into navigating family relationships, talking about what is the impact of having this unit. We are a community. We're not living in this independent society where it's just me and my opinions that matter. We have people around us that are valuable and important. We don't just cut off those relationships when it starts not working for us. We work on it. We talk about reproductive and sexual health. Oh, I said sexual. It's important. It's so important to talk to children when they're going through puberty. What does this mean? Raise of hands. How many people had a sex talk in their house from their parents? Oh, much more than I expected, y'all. You're
About 25%.
oh, well, impressive. That just means my like standards are super low, but we need to have these conversations because you can't put children who are going through puberty and not understanding the changes in their body and be like, go figure it out yourself. I can tell you, this is like personal disclosure, but like my mom signed that form that says she doesn't need the sex ed class in high school because she's Muslim. And I was like, oh, okay. But it doesn't, being Muslim doesn't mean we don't need education around reproductive and sexual health. And this is for women and men, right? This is important for everyone. We talk a lot about mental health and addiction. You talked about going to therapy. It's so important to unpack these things. We're literally in a mental health conference. But also addiction, right? We can't ignore that there is substance use addiction, there is gambling addiction, there is porn addiction. There are so many different types of addictions in our communities that exist. And we need to give children the framework to be able to learn about these things and combat these things so we're preventing it before it even happens. And once it happens, we have resources like the rehab center, the Tranquility Rehab, check out their table. We also talk about online presence. Cybersecurity, the internet, it is a huge part of our children's lives now, and we can't just ignore it, right? You can't just say, I'm not going to give my child access to the internet, or I'm going to stare over their shoulder every second of every day. We know children have access to the internet away from us. They can clear those search histories. They can clear the cache, right? We need to be able to have these conversations with them so that they're prepared to take in whatever information they're getting, filter through it with a critical lens, and move on. The other thing is, this is not just about like all the negative things on the internet. Even when you're thinking about Islamic concepts, we have children who are going to Sheikh Google, right? Is everything on Google about Islam accurate? No, you have fatwas from God knows who. You need to have children be able to go to Sheikh Google and look at it with a critical lens, being like, do I want to take this? Do I not want to take this? And that's not something they're just going to magically develop, right? That's something we have to help them work through. And then finally, we talk a lot about diversity and tolerance because again, culture is a big part of our lived experiences. So we can't just push it aside. And we need to talk about different topics like gender roles, gender identities, and how does Islam, sexuality, like thinking about like the LGBTQ community. This is an important concept. We can't pretend like there aren't Muslim people who identify with the LGBTQ community. It exists. What do we do about it? Let's have conversations because suppressing it and pushing it to the side is clearly not working. Yeah.
Quick comment, but like going back to So my dad taught me when I was young, sex is bad.
Oh.
That's what I grew up with.
Mhm.
Okay, I guess that was the conversation.
Yeah.
So growing up as a child with that and going through teenage years with that, and then getting into college and university and adulthood and recognizing that that statement was wrong many years later, and just recovering and healing from the impact of that, it's a lot.
Yeah, even those statements that parents make that they might not realize the long lasting impact it has such a strong impact on our youth and our children. And parents might be like, you're 22, go get married. And in your head, you're like, but sex is bad. What do I do? Right. And it's so important to keep in mind that all of these messages we're giving children, we need to counteract them with a proper, healthy training that is rooted within Islam. We're not saying anything that's out of Islam. I can guarantee you, we had a lot of fidelity checks, had scholars read through all of these things. And a lot of these conversations that come, it's like creating that safe space for children to be curious. Curiosity is encouraged in Islam. Questioning is encouraged in Islam, right? Islam is not prescriptive in a way where it's like, nope, you don't have any thought process, just take it as I say it, right? Our aql is a big part of who we are as Muslims. Yeah, you have a thought?
So I'm just wondering, because I work with kids. And I find often that the problem is not within the child, it's within the family. That when a child starts changing, let's say they have issues or whatever is going on for them, like multiple kids that I work with, the family is like, we have to change that. So like, where do you incorporate the adults in this? Because you have to have the adult open and willing to hear this also. And I don't, like a lot of times I'll get, here, fix my kid. Well, I don't live in your house.
Yeah.
I can help him navigate some things, but I'm gonna expect you to be in here at a minimum of once a month because I don't live in your house.
Yeah.
So opening parents up to this, how do you incorporate?
So parents are involved in the sense that we often need consent from parents. So we have a whole process of informing them about the curriculum. They want to know what we're teaching their children, right? They're not just going to let your children come to this program. But for now, we don't have parent sessions per se. We're really focusing on the youth. Inshallah, our next curriculum will be focusing more on positive parenting and pieces along those lines. Alhamdulillah, we have other resources in the community as well that focus more on the parenting side. For the sake of this curriculum, we're really focused on creating that safe space for the youth to be able to talk about a lot of these topics that they're getting from other places and not necessarily getting from their homes, but getting it in a context of a safe space.
Right, and then we do have a session, we have an orientation session for parents. We also have parents, especially with the
10 minutes?
program.
10 minutes?
We have parents do evaluations before, during, and after, so that we are getting their input. And then at the end, the last session is a graduation where children are talking to their parents about, and I say children, it's really youth, obviously. Children and youth are talking to their parents about what they learned. So there are sort of touch points in the process of the curriculum where we pull parents in.
I only have 5 minutes, so I am going to skip over the research, but if you're interested in the efficacy, let me know. But we did a pilot program, which basically we did a training of trainers. We had 12 youth and community leaders from around the US who are already working with youth groups or communities or had access. And we did a 2-day training where they were completely trained in this curriculum. We provide them all the resources. We provide them a facilitator's guide, PowerPoints, resources to be able to take this back to their communities and implement it. We ran 3 groups between June and September of 2022. One was middle school, one was high school, one was college age. Alhamdulillah, it worked out perfectly. We did not plan that. And we did 6 weeks of bi-weekly trainers check-in. So they could come back and talk about the concerns that were arising as they were implementing these programs. I'll just quickly tell you, there was a small increase in the knowledge from the youth. But again, we had a very small sample size, but there is potential for growth. In terms of the parents, The behaviors kind of stayed pretty typical, but one area that was important in terms of just like the qualitative findings were that a lot of parents were finding it like, okay, we needed this because we don't know how to talk to our children about this. So we needed experts who could bring this to our community and have these conversations and open that door so that then we can talk through some of these things in our own community. When we think about the trainers themselves, there was a stark change in behavior, which is understandable, right? Trainers were feeling, okay, I can actually have this conversation with youth. I feel so much more comfortable doing that. Because a lot of times we put youth leaders into the community to be like, okay, go help them. And they're like, I don't know how to do this. I don't have the support. I don't have the resources. And as PFP, what we want to do is build that foundation under you so that you feel supported in doing that work and you're not burning out. In those trainers group check-ins, some of the themes that were really coming out is this building community trust. Your community is not just going to let a random person come in and talk to your children of the community, right? They're going to be like, who are you? They're going to vet you, as they should. We shouldn't have random people just coming in and doing this. One good thing is that Peaceful Families has a pretty good rep. So you can say, hey, this is a curriculum from Peaceful Families, but also youth leaders who are from the community will have a more strong impact, which is why we take that more training of trainers approach, because we want people from the community to be able to make an impact in their own community. They're going to be so much more invested. The confidentiality and safe space is such an important part. We had children being like, are you going to tell my parents what I said? Right? And we tell them, hey, as long as there isn't any risk of harm, because, okay, if there's risk of harm, we need to talk to your parents. Everything you say in this space stays in this space. We had children who were like, hey, that's my cousin. What if she goes and tells my parent what we're talking about, right? So we are very explicit about creating those safe space group norms so that children feel comfortable. I keep saying children, but youth. Youth feel comfortable having these conversations.
And that's, we had parents saying, and what are my kids saying? We also had disclosure of abuse, and we also had disclosure of domestic violence within the home. So one of the reasons why we wanted to do the training around these curriculums is you don't just, we're not just selling this so you go out and then like, you know, walk on a minefield and have things blow up. And then parents will say, well, we're never doing this again. That as trainers, you also need support because these are really difficult conversations and they open up. Youth are amazing. Kids are amazing. When you give them the opportunity, they talk. And then you have to be ready for what you hear.
And that goes to the next two pieces, which one is we talk a lot about these ethical considerations, especially for a lot of us who are in mental health fields. In majority of states, we are mandated reporters. We are required to report any potential child abuse that's happening. And witnessing domestic violence is considered abuse of a child, right? Because they're in a home that is unsafe. And so we do a lot of work in that, collaborating with trainers and talking around these pieces of, okay, what do we do? What do we don't do? Doing that informed consent process with parents and children in advance to let them know, hey, if something like this comes up, we have to talk about it. Because, and this is not saying, hey, we're going to air your dirty laundry or, hey, we're going to just report this for the sake of reporting this. Our priority is keeping our children safe. So if we hear that a child is going through abuse and we stay silent, what does that say about us? That's not Islamic. And then the other thing is trainers' comfort level. A lot of trainers were like, whew, someone just talked about domestic violence, but I don't even want to touch that. So maybe I'll do that next week. And we work really closely together with them to be like, okay, no, these are topics we need to build comfort in. And the only way we can build that comfort is by putting ourselves into it, by practicing and by knowing what resources are available. So some of the qualitative responses that we got were things like the teens were curious and enjoyed the discussions. Parents told us that they were coming willingly, which I can tell you about youth, that is not that common. I was surprised by some of the questions we received. There's a lot of curiosity in our youth. So really just creating that space for them gave them so much opportunity to unleash a lot of that Pandora's box, all those questions that are inside of them that they didn't have another space to learn. Thinking about creating a place where they could belong, right? Over the span of 8 weeks, this is not just people you're coming to a group with, right? These are people you know very personal details about, or opinion, or understand their opinions, their worldview, their perspectives. You're creating a community that is safe for them, that's going to last even beyond the training. And then constructive feedback that we're doing a lot to work on is making sure that this information is inclusive of different sects in Islam. So a lot of the work that we do comes from like Sunni Islam, and we are expanding that so that this is something that is more relevant to our entire community in a more holistic sense. Future directions, making more culturally relevant. We're going to do a lot of long-term follow-up, and we're going to continue this program. So if you're interested in being one of these, being trained in this curriculum, you want to be involved, we'll have an interest form in 2 seconds. Okay, well, we're not going to do the module, so sorry about that, y'all. See, wait, can we go to 510?
There's a session at 5:10, so 5:09.
509, okay. So sneak peek of one of our modules, we talk a lot about core values of healthy relationships. This is one of the preliminary things we do. This is all stuff we get from Islam. Islam talks about mutuality and mutual decision-making and mutual kindness in relationships. Islam talks about love, muwadda, right? Love isn't just something we throw to the side. This is something that's an integral part of our religion. We talk about compassion, rahmah. We talk about tranquility, sakina. Right? In the Quran, it says the purpose of marriage is to seek tranquility, kindness, and goodness. So we talk about all of these concepts of what are the building blocks for a relationship from Islam.
And for our younger kids, that includes friendships, that includes with our cousins, that includes with our siblings. So it's not all romantic relationships. These are strong core beliefs about relationships in general, about relationships between believers.
And we'll just end on a quick activity, which is going to get y'all up anyways. So one of our group activities is it healthy disagreement? Is it abuse? I'm going to expand this, but I'm going to ask you all to get up. We have a scenario, and we're going to say, that's the abuse side of the room. This is like, you know, gray area, unhealthy, and this is the healthy side of the room. So you hear your parents talking loudly about money issues. They're sitting in the dining room with their bills, trying to figure out how to save more money. Is this abuse? Is this unhealthy disagreement, or is this healthy? Just move to that side of the room. Abuse over there. Unhealthy in the middle. Healthy on the left.
They're just talking loudly.
They're talking really loudly. Unhealthy. Unhealthy, abuse, healthy.
They're talking loudly.
Talking loudly. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so most people are in healthy. Is anyone in unhealthy? Yeah, tell me why.
I think like talking loudly shows they're not having emotional intelligence in terms of what they display to their kids and the role modeling that they're having. So they need to be more aware of that.
Yeah, the modeling. So what we would do in the group is really unpack what everyone's decisions were and talk through some of these things. There's no clear-cut answer for any of these scenarios, right? So as you outlined, the role modeling you're doing with kids.
And the cultural piece.
And the cultural piece. Yeah. In some cultures, loud voices is very normal. In some, it's not. So bringing that in. Okay, you see your father hit your younger brother across the back of his head because his teacher called about some fights he's had with other students at school. Abuse, unhealthy, healthy.
Well, we don't know what the pattern is. Yeah, we don't know.
So abuse is over there, unhealthy. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Let's have someone's opinion. Yeah.
I think the fact that like the father feels like it's okay to even like hit the younger brother across the back of his head shows that there's a level of boundaries that have already been crossed like mentally for the father. And it shows like a deeper underlying issue. And I also just don't think that like that's a very healthy way of dealing with like your child having fights with other kids at school. Like you're disciplining violence with more violence, so it doesn't really
Going back to the modeling. Yeah. Going back to the modeling piece. And then one thing that Dr. Berte said that's really important is, well, we don't know what the pattern is. Does dad always do this? Like, how often has the kid gotten like in these fights? What's going on? What's the cultural relevance? Is the kid in the hospital? Are there any marks or bruises? You know, so there's gray areas here. And then finally, y'all will find this. You hear your mom crying in the bathroom. You ask if she's okay, and she says she's fine. At dinner, you see that she has bruises and scratches on her arm. Abuse, unhealthy, healthy. One really important question, was it the cat? I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, okay. Well, the nice thing is this activity took you all close to the door, but this is kind of a sneak peek of the types of activities we do in this curriculum to really get children engaged, to be thinking about these topics. None of the answers to these scenarios were clear cut. There's no one right answer. And what we want to do is start those conversations for the youth to start thinking about some of these patterns, some of these cultural considerations, some of these role modeling pieces. And so what I'm going to do is, if you're interested in this curriculum, if you're interested in our work, if you scan that QR code, it'll take you to an interest form to get trained in this curriculum. So inshallah, when we do.
Will be holding the next training of trainer, which is a 2-day training sometime toward the end of summer, early fall. Get us your in, because we will do it quicker if we know we have more interest. So absolutely fill out that form. Is that in person or?
In person.
Where at?
DC.
Usually DC. Great, get out of Michigan.
Absolutely. Come.
So by the way, we
Yeah, so
some came from within.
Yes.
For domestic violence, $15 in their name. For those of you who don't know, in memory of the 11 women and children that we lost last summer to domestic homicide. We asked people to use those during domestic violence funds.
okay, yeah.
Buttons.
One
and
blue and
for
one
$5
white.
looking
What did you
at
say?
the perspective of,
Okay. Okay. Also, everyone, the closing remarks are happening in the auditorium, like right now, room 112. So if you're interested in closing for day one, head on over. And if anyone has questions about our work or anything, we will stick around. So feel free to come ask.
So it is.
Okay, pilot program. So we are doing our next round of training for this curriculum sometime this summer or early fall.
Right.
So if you sign up for that interest form, we will give you the information for when it exactly happens.
Yeah.
And we basically, what it looks like is it's a 2-day training where you come out, we kind of train you in all these pieces. We talk about things that tend to come up in these curriculums.